The smell of death lingered in the air of the grand penthouse that overlooked the city. It wasn't the kind you could detect with your nose, but rather a feeling that settled in your bones. James Wilson lay in his custom-made bed, his once powerful frame now frail and withered. The doctors had given him 3 months to live 6 months ago. The mysterious illness that ravaged his body had no name, no cure, and apparently no mercy. His skin had taken on an ashen hue, and the sparkle that once lit his eyes had dimmed to nearly nothing. Machines beeped steadily around him, monitoring every failing aspect of his body. The best medical professionals money could buy had tried everything, but nothing worked. James Wilson, the man who built an empire from nothing, who controlled businesses worth billions across the globe, was losing the one battle that mattered most. "Mr. Wilson, your new cleaner is here," his personal assistant announced from the doorway. James didn't bother to look up. Staff came and went these days. No one lasted long around a dying man, especially one as demanding as him. "Send her in," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. The woman who entered was nothing remarkable at first glance. She wore a simple uniform, her hair tied back neatly. Her hands, though worn from years of hard work, moved with careful precision as she organized her cleaning supplies. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed out of place in the cold, sterile room. "I'm Rose. I'll be taking care of your living space from now on." James merely grunted in response. What did it matter who cleaned his rooms when he wouldn't be around to see them much longer? Rose worked quietly, but there was something different about her presence. She hummed softly as she moved about the room, and occasionally she would pause near the windows to adjust the curtains, letting in more light. "You don't have to do that," James said abruptly when she opened the blinds wider. Rose turned to him with a gentle smile. "The sunshine is good for you, Mr. Wilson. Even if it doesn't feel like it now." Something about her confidence irritated him. "What would you know about what's good for me? You're just the cleaner." If his harshness bothered her, she didn't show it. "I know that darkness doesn't help anyone heal. And everyone deserves a little light." James scoffed. "Heal? The best doctors in the world have tried to heal me. There's nothing to be done." He gestured weakly at the stack of medical reports on his bedside table. "I'm dying in case no one told you." Rose's eyes softened as she looked at him. Not with pity, James had seen enough pity to last several lifetimes, but with something else. Something that looked strangely like understanding. "Everyone's dying, Mr. Wilson. The question is how we live until then." Before James could respond to this unexpected philosophy from his cleaning lady, his personal assistant rushed back in, panic evident on his face. "Mr. Wilson, there's an emergency with the Tokyo acquisition. The board is requesting an immediate conference call." James tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced him back down. "Tell them I'm unavailable." "Sir, they're threatening to pull out entirely if you don't address their concerns personally." James cursed under his breath. Even on his deathbed, the world wouldn't leave him in peace. He'd worked his entire life to build his company, and now he couldn't even die without it demanding more from him. A sudden, reckless idea came to him. Perhaps it was the delirium from his medication, or perhaps it was simply that he had nothing left to lose. He reached for his wallet on the nightstand, his fingers trembling as he extracted a sleek black card from it. He held it out, not to his assistant, but to Rose. "Take it," he told the cleaner. Rose hesitated, confusion clear on her face. "I don't understand, Mr. Wilson." "My black card. Unlimited access to my accounts. The Tokyo executives need reassurance? By their damn company. Whatever it takes." His assistant gasped. "Sir, you can't possibly." "I'm dying, Robert. What's the worst that could happen? She spends all my money?" James laughed bitterly. "I won't be around to miss it." Rose still hadn't taken the card. She looked at James with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Why would you trust me with this? You don't know me." James felt exhaustion washing over him again. "Consider it a final experiment. To see if there's any decency left in the world. Or maybe I just want to cause chaos one last time. Take it or don't, it makes no difference to me." Slowly, Rose reached out and took the black card from his trembling fingers. As their hands briefly touched, James felt an odd sensation, like a spark of energy passing between them. He dismissed it as another symptom of his failing body. "I'll take care of it, Mr. Wilson," Rose said quietly, slipping the card into her pocket. "Rest now." As James drifted off to sleep, he wondered idly what this strange woman would do with the power he'd just handed her. Would she empty his accounts and disappear? Would she try to save his company? In his increasingly rare moments of clarity, he realized he might have just made the most foolish decision of his life. Or perhaps his last. What James Wilson didn't know as he fell into a fitful sleep was that this reckless act would set in motion a chain of events that neither he nor Rose could have anticipated. And that the woman who quietly finished cleaning his room, occasionally glancing at him with thoughtful eyes, held more secrets than the simple uniform suggested. The black card sat heavy in Rose's pocket as she completed her work. It represented more than just money to her. It represented an opportunity, and perhaps, though she hardly dared to hope, a solution to a problem much bigger than a business deal in Tokyo. As she left the penthouse that evening, Rose made a phone call that would change everything. "I found him," she said simply to the person on the other end of the line. "And I think there might still be time." When James woke the next morning, he immediately sensed something was different. The constant pain that had become his unwelcome companion had subsided slightly. The fog that usually clouded his mind seemed thinner somehow. He attributed it to having a good night's sleep, something that had become increasingly rare as his condition worsened. His bedside table had been cleared of the usual clutter of medication bottles and replaced with a single glass of what looked like juice, deep purple in color with specks of green. Next to it was a handwritten note. "Drink this. Might help. Rose." James stared at the glass suspiciously. His first instinct was to call security and have the cleaner fired immediately. Who did she think she was, leaving some strange concoction for him? He had a team of doctors prescribing his every medicine, monitoring his every intake. And yet, what did he have to lose? With a shaky hand, he reached for the glass and sniffed the contents. It smelled earthy and slightly sweet. Before he could reconsider, he took a small sip. The taste wasn't unpleasant, tart with an underlying sweetness. He drank the rest slowly, expecting his body to reject it as it had rejected so many treatments before. But nothing bad happened. In fact, as the minutes passed, he felt a strange warmth spreading through his body, reaching places that had felt cold and dead for months. His phone rang, startling him out of his contemplation. "Mr. Wilson," his assistant's voice came through, sounding bewildered. "I'm calling about the Tokyo deal." James braced himself for bad news. He had given his black card to a cleaning lady in a moment of delirium. Surely she had maxed it out and disappeared. "The executives have agreed to all our terms. They've signed the preliminary paperwork this morning." James sat up straighter in bed. "What? How?" "That's what I'm trying to understand, sir. Ms. Rose attended the video conference in your name. She explained that you were indisposed but had entrusted her with full negotiating power. Then she offered them exactly what they wanted but with conditions that actually favor us in the long run. It was brilliant. They were so caught off guard they agreed almost immediately." James couldn't believe what he was hearing. "She did what?" "She saved the deal, sir. And somehow managed to improve our position in it. The board is ecstatic. They're asking if Ms. Rose will be handling more negotiations in your absence." James hung up without answering. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had happened. Who was this woman? Certainly not an ordinary cleaner. And what was in that drink she'd left him? As if summoned by his thoughts, there was a soft knock on his door, and Rose entered, pushing her cleaning cart. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson. You're looking better today." James studied her carefully. She wore the same simple uniform, her expression pleasant but unremarkable. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was the type of person who could negotiate multi-billion-dollar business deals. "The Tokyo acquisition," he said bluntly. "How did you do it?" A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "I simply gave them what they wanted while protecting what matters to you." "And how would you know what matters to me?" Rose moved about the room, dusting surfaces with methodical precision. "Your company files are quite detailed if you know where to look. And people talk, Mr. Wilson. Your assistants, your board members, your doctors. They all have opinions about what you value. You accessed my company files? That's grounds for termination and legal action." She looked at him calmly. "You gave me unlimited access to your accounts, Mr. Wilson. Your company is part of those accounts. I did exactly what you asked me to do." James couldn't argue with that logic, irritating as it was. "And what about this?" He held up the now empty glass. "What did you give me?" "A remedy my grandmother taught me. Herbs and fruits with natural anti-inflammatory properties. Nothing dangerous, I assure you. I have a team of specialists who couldn't help me, but you think your grandmother's home remedy will?" he asked sarcastically, even as he noticed the pain in his joints had indeed lessened. Rose stopped her cleaning and looked at him directly. "Modern medicine is powerful, Mr. Wilson, but it doesn't have all the answers. Sometimes the old ways still have value." "Why are you doing this?" James demanded. "What do you want from me?" For the first time, Rose's confident demeanor faltered slightly. I gave you my reason yesterday. Everyone deserves a little light. She paused, then added more quietly, even billionaires who think they're beyond saving. Before James could respond, his private doctor burst into the room, waving a tablet with test results. Mr. Wilson, something extraordinary has happened. Your inflammation markers are down by 15% since yesterday. Whatever new medication they've put you on is showing promising results. James looked from the doctor to Rose, who had quietly resumed her cleaning as if she weren't listening to every word. No new medication, doctor, James said slowly. Just a change in my routine. The doctor looked confused but pleased. Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. This is the first positive change we've seen in months. I'd like to run additional tests this afternoon to confirm these results. After the doctor left, James turned his attention back to Rose. She was humming softly as she worked, seemingly oblivious to the significant moment that had just occurred. You still have my card, he said eventually. Rose nodded without looking up. I do. Would you like it back? James considered this question carefully. Everything he knew about business and self-preservation told him to say yes, to cut off this strange woman's access to his fortune immediately. But something else, curiosity perhaps, or the unfamiliar feeling of hope that had started to bloom in his chest, made him hesitate. Not yet, he decided. It seems you might be useful after all. Rose finally looked up at him, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw something like relief flash across her face. But it was gone so quickly he might have imagined it. As you wish, Mr. Wilson. Is there anything specific you'd like me to handle today? James leaned back against his pillows, feeling less weak than he had in weeks. Yes, actually. There's a children's hospital in the city that's been requesting funding for a new wing. My foundation has been holding back due to some concerns about their administration. Look into it. If you think it's worthwhile, make it happen. Rose nodded, a genuine smile spreading across her face. I'll take care of it right away. As she turned to leave, James called after her, and Rose? Bring me another glass of whatever that was tomorrow. Of course, Mr. Wilson. After she left, James found himself staring out the window at the city below. For the first time in months, he felt something other than resignation about his fate. It was probably foolish to get his hopes up based on one decent morning and slightly improved test results. His condition was terminal, all the doctors had agreed on that. And yet, as he watched the sunlight playing across the buildings outside, he couldn't help feeling that something significant had changed. Whether it was the mysterious drink, the unexpected business success, or simply the presence of someone who didn't treat him like he was already dead, James wasn't sure. What he did know was that he wanted to see what would happen next. A week passed then too. Each morning, Rose would arrive with her cleaning supplies and a fresh glass of the purple-green concoction. Each day James would drink it, and each day he felt incrementally better. His doctors were baffled by his improvement. The mysterious illness that had been consuming him seemed to be retreating little by little. During this time, James observed Rose carefully. She continued to clean his penthouse with the same quiet efficiency, but he now noticed things he had missed before. The way she studied his medical charts when she thought he wasn't looking. How she sometimes spoke on the phone in hushed tones, using terms that sounded medical in nature. The careful way she measured ingredients for his daily drink, adjusting the proportions slightly each time as if following some complex formula. Rose had also continued to use his black card, but not in ways he expected. She had indeed funded the children's hospital wing, after negotiating changes to their administration that impressed even James. She had made donations to medical research facilities focused on rare diseases. And most surprisingly, she had set up a program to provide healthy meals to underprivileged communities across the city. When James questioned her about these expenditures, her answer was simple: money should circulate to where it's needed most. It's like blood in the body, it needs to flow freely to keep the whole system healthy. Today, James felt strong enough to sit in a chair by the window instead of remaining bedridden. He watched as Rose arranged fresh flowers on a table nearby. "Who are you really?" he asked abruptly. Rose's hands stilled for a moment before she continued her task. "What do you mean?" "I'm your cleaner." No ordinary cleaner negotiates business deals, understands complex medical terminology, or knows how to treat an illness that stumped the best doctors in the country. Rose turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "People can be many things, Mr. Wilson. Just as you're more than just a billionaire. Stop deflecting. I want the truth. Who are you and what do you want from me?" Rose sighed and sat down in the chair opposite him. For a long moment, she seemed to be considering her words carefully. My name is Rose Johnson. That part is true. I am a cleaner now, but I wasn't always. She paused. I was once a researcher specializing in rare botanical medicines and their applications for immune-related disorders. James frowned. A researcher? Where? At your company's pharmaceutical division, actually. Wilcor Pharmaceuticals. I led a team developing treatments derived from plants found in remote regions of the world. James felt a chill run through him that had nothing to do with his illness. Wilcor Pharmaceuticals was indeed one of his companies, but it was a relatively small acquisition he'd made 5 years ago. He left its operations largely to the management team he'd put in place. If you worked for me, why are you now cleaning my house? And why didn't you say anything? Rose's eyes hardened slightly. Because 3 years ago, my entire research program was shut down without explanation. My team was disbanded. Our work, years of promising research, was archived and buried. When I protested, I was terminated. No references, no severance, nothing. I couldn't find work in my field again. James was taken aback. That doesn't sound like how my companies operate. Doesn't it? Rose asked quietly. Your empire is so vast, Mr. Wilson. Do you really know everything that happens within it? The implication stung, partly because James knew it was true. In recent years, as his companies expanded globally, he had become more removed from day-to-day operations. He trusted his executives to run things efficiently and profitably, sometimes without questioning their methods. Why come back as my cleaner? Revenge? Rose shook her head. Information. I needed to understand why our research was shut down when it was showing such promise. And then. She hesitated. And then? James prompted. And then I learned about your illness. The symptoms described in your medical file matched the very condition our research was targeting. It seemed like too significant a coincidence. James leaned forward, ignoring the twinge of pain the movement caused. Are you saying my company suppressed research that could have helped me? I'm saying it's a possibility we need to consider. The timing is suspicious. Our program was shut down right around the time your first symptoms appeared. James felt the room spinning around him, and not from his illness. That makes no sense. Why would anyone in my company do that? Rose's voice was gentle but firm. Think about it, Mr. Wilson. Who stands to gain if you die? Who takes control of your empire? The question hit him like a physical blow. His mind raced through the list of potential successors. His executive board. His COO Richard Mercer, who had been with him for 20 years. The various family members and distant relatives listed in his will. This is why I've been using your black card the way I have, Rose continued. Yes, those charitable causes are worthy, but they also provided cover for me to access information and resources I needed. The research facilities I've been funding? They're helping me recreate and continue my old work. The community meal program? The fruits and herbs in those meals are being sourced from the same suppliers I used in my research, suppliers I couldn't afford to access on a cleaner's salary. And my daily drink? James asked, already suspecting the answer. A simplified version of the treatment we were developing. I've been refining it based on your body's responses. That's why you're improving, Mr. Wilson. Not dramatically, but steadily. James sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything Rose had told him. It was almost too fantastic to believe. And yet, the evidence was in his own body. He was getting better when all the doctors had said that was impossible. Why help me? He finally asked. After what my company did to you, why not let me die? Rose's expression softened. Because that's not who I am. And because I believe in the work we were doing. It wasn't just about treating one condition. It was about changing how we approach medicine entirely. Your recovery could prove the value of our research. And what do you want in return? My research reinstated. Proper funding. Recognition for my team members who lost their livelihoods. She paused. And a full investigation into who made the decision to shut us down and why. James nodded slowly. It was a fair request, and far less than she could have demanded given the leverage she now held over him. There's something else you should know, Rose added, her voice dropping lower. The treatment I'm giving you isn't a complete cure yet. It's managing your symptoms and slowing the progression of the disease, but we need the full resources of a proper lab to develop the complete treatment. How much time do I have? With the current formula? Maybe 6 months of improved quality of life. But eventually the disease will adapt. James took a deep breath. 6 months ago he would have considered 6 months of decent health a miracle. Now it felt like merely a starting point. Then we have work to do, he said firmly. Starting tomorrow, you're no longer my cleaner. You're my personal research consultant, with full access to whatever resources you need. Rose looked surprised. You believe me? Just like that. I believe the evidence of my own body. And I've built my fortune on knowing when to trust my instincts. James leaned back in his chair, already feeling fatigue setting in despite his improved condition. Besides, what's the alternative? Go back to dying slowly while wondering if someone in my inner circle betrayed me? A small smile appeared on Rose's face. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. James, he corrected her. If you're going to save my life, you might as well use my first name. As Rose gathered her cleaning supplies to leave, a new understanding existed between them. They were no longer merely employer and employee, or even patient and healer. They were allies in a fight against both a mysterious illness and potentially, against enemies hidden within James's own company. For the first time since his diagnosis, James felt something he had almost forgotten. The thrill of having a purpose, a battle to fight. And strangely enough, he wasn't facing it alone. The transformation of Rose from cleaner to researcher happened overnight. James made a few calls, and by morning she had an office adjacent to his penthouse, equipped with everything she needed to continue her work more effectively. Her cleaning uniform was replaced with professional attire, though she insisted on preparing James's daily medicine herself rather than delegating it to a lab assistant. James's executive team was informed that he had hired a new health consultant who had shown promising results. Most accepted this explanation without question, eager to hear that their boss might be recovering. Only Richard Mercer, James's COO and most trusted advisor for 2 decades, expressed concerns. A former cleaner with no verifiable credentials? Richard said during a private meeting with James. You can't seriously be putting your health in her hands. James observed his old friend carefully. Was that genuine concern in Richard's eyes, or something else? Her methods are working, Richard. That's all that matters to me right now. And these unusual expenditures she's making with your accounts? The board is starting to ask questions. The board works for me, not the other way around, James reminded him sharply. Any concerns should come directly to me. Richard sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. I'm just looking out for you, James. As I always have. You're vulnerable right now, and this woman appears out of nowhere with miracle cures and immediate access to your funds. Surely you can see how that looks. There was truth in Richard's words, and a week ago, James might have agreed with him. But now doubt had been planted. Was Richard's concern genuine, or was he one of the people who might benefit from James's death? Your concern is noted, James said finally. But my decision stands. Rose stays and her work continues. After Richard left, Rose emerged from the adjoining room where she had been reviewing James's complete medical history. He doesn't trust me, she stated simply. Should he? James countered. Rose smiled faintly. Probably not, from his perspective. I wouldn't trust me either if I were in his position. And what position is that exactly? The position of someone who has everything to lose if you recover completely. James nodded thoughtfully. Richard has been with me from the beginning. Before the billions, before the empire. It's hard to imagine him betraying me. The people closest to us often have the most to gain from our downfall, Rose said quietly. But I'm not accusing him specifically. We need evidence, not suspicions. James agreed. So how do we get that evidence? We need to access records from Wilcor Pharmaceuticals from 3 years ago. Specifically, we need to know who ordered my research program terminated and what reason they gave. That shouldn't be difficult. I own the company after all. Rose shook her head. It's not that simple. If someone went to the trouble of burying my research to harm you, they would have covered their tracks. A direct inquiry from you would alert them. We need to be more subtle. James considered this. What do you propose? A routine compliance audit. Your companies undergo them regularly, right? We can include Wilcor in the next round and request all documentation related to research program terminations as part of standard procedure. Clever, James acknowledged. But that still leaves us with a problem. If someone in my company is behind this, they might still have access to your research data. We need that to complete the treatment. Actually, Rose said with a hint of pride, I may have anticipated something like this happening. When our program was terminated, I managed to smuggle out backup copies of our most critical findings. Not everything, but enough to give us a foundation. I hid them where no one would think to look. Where? In a safety deposit box registered to my grandmother. The herbs and preparation methods were passed down through her family for generations before I ever studied them scientifically. It seemed fitting. James couldn't help but be impressed by her foresight. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? Not exactly planning, Rose corrected. Hoping for an opportunity. When I saw the cleaning position open in your residence, it felt like fate. She paused. Or maybe just good timing. Your condition had reached a critical stage and I knew I might be able to help. As they continued discussing their strategy, James found himself studying Rose more carefully. There was an intensity to her that he hadn't fully appreciated before, a brilliant mind behind the humble exterior she had first presented. In another life, under different circumstances, she might have been running one of his research divisions instead of cleaning his floors. The thought made him uncomfortable, forcing him to confront the reality that his vast corporate structure might have wronged others like Rose, talented individuals crushed by decisions made far above them, decisions he had delegated without sufficient oversight. We should start the audit tomorrow, James decided. And while that's happening, I want you to tell me everything about your original research. Leave nothing out. Rose nodded, but before she could respond, James's personal phone rang, a line reserved for family and his closest associates. The caller ID showed it was his niece, Sophia, his only living relative who still kept in regular contact. She had been traveling abroad when his condition worsened and had been devastated that she couldn't return immediately due to work commitments. Uncle James, her voice came through bright and relieved. I just heard from Richard that you're doing better. Is it true? Are the new treatments working? James glanced at Rose, who had discreetly moved away to give him privacy but remained within earshot. Yes, Sophia. I'm feeling stronger every day. When are you coming back to the States? That's actually why I'm calling. I've wrapped up everything here in London and I'm flying back tomorrow. I can't wait to see you and meet this miracle Dr. Richard mentioned. James frowned slightly at the mention of Richard. He told you about Rose? Just that you have a new health consultant who's showing promising results. Oh, Uncle James, I'm so relieved. I've been so worried about you. I've missed you too, Sophia. We'll catch up properly when you're here. After he hung up, Rose approached again. Your niece? James nodded. Sophia. The daughter of my late brother. She's the only family I have left who isn't just waiting for their inheritance. He paused. At least, I believe so. Rose's expression was sympathetic. It must be difficult, never knowing people's true intentions. It's the price of wealth, James said simply. You learn to live with it. Is that why you gave your black card to a complete stranger? To see what would happen. James smiled ruefully. Perhaps. Or maybe I was just tired of being surrounded by people who treated me like a dying man rather than a living one. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of the unusual circumstances that had brought them together and the even stranger alliance they now shared. The moment was interrupted by James's assistant announcing that the audit team was assembled and ready for instructions. It was time to begin their investigation in earnest. As Rose left to prepare the audit documentation, James found himself wondering about the boundaries of their new relationship. She was now his potential savior, his ally in uncovering a possible conspiracy, and perhaps something approaching a friend. Someone who saw him as a person first, not just a billionaire or a patient. It was an unfamiliar feeling and not entirely unwelcome. 2 days after initiating the audit at Wilcor Pharmaceuticals, Rose burst into James's penthouse, her face flushed with excitement and alarm. I found something, she announced, placing her laptop on the table in front of him. The audit team sent over the first batch of files this morning, and I've been combing through them. Look at this. James leaned forward to examine the screen. It showed an email chain from 3 years ago, discussing the termination of several research programs due to budget realignment. Rose's botanical medicine project was on the list, along with 3 others. Budget cuts aren't unusual, James noted. What am I missing? Look at the date, Rose pointed at the timestamp. March 15th. Now look at this. She pulled up another document, a medical report from James's personal physician. Your first abnormal test results appeared on March 10th, just 5 days earlier. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. James studied the documents carefully. This still doesn't tell us who made the decision. No, but look at the approval signature on the budget realignment. Rose zoomed in on a digital signature at the bottom of the document. Richard Mercer, James read aloud, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. But this doesn't prove anything. As COO, Richard approves dozens of budget decisions every month. True, but there's more. Rose pulled up another document. This is a list of all terminated projects from that period. Notice anything unusual? James scanned the list. They're all medical research programs related to immunology or rare diseases. Exactly. And here's where it gets even more suspicious. She opened a financial report. 2 months after these programs were terminated, Wilcor acquired a small biotech company called Nexus Therapeutics for an amount well above market value. Guess what Nexus specialized in? Let me guess. Treatments for conditions similar to mine? Rose nodded grimly. They had a promising treatment in development, but it was years away from clinical trials. The acquisition effectively buried their research too, as they were absorbed into Wilcor's structure and their projects reprioritized. James leaned back, trying to process this information. So someone systematically eliminated research that might have helped treat my condition, including yours. But why? What would be the point? I think, Rose began, but was interrupted by the arrival of Sophia, who entered the penthouse without knocking, as was her habit. "Uncle James," she exclaimed, rushing to embrace him. "You look so much better." James returned her hug warmly, genuinely pleased to see her. Sophia had always been his favorite relative, with her bright intelligence and genuine affection that seemed unrelated to his wealth. Sophia, perfect timing. "I'd like you to meet Rose Johnson, my new health consultant. Rose, this is my niece, Sophia Wilson." Rose extended her hand with a polite smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Wilson. Your uncle speaks highly of you." Sophia shook Rose's hand enthusiastically. "The pleasure is all mine. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing for him. I was so afraid I was going to lose him." "We're making progress," Rose said carefully. "But there's still work to be done." "Whatever you need, just say the word," Sophia insisted. "I want to help in any way I can." As Sophia settled in, chatting about her work in London and catching up with her uncle, Rose discreetly closed her laptop, keeping their discoveries private for now. James gave her a slight nod of approval. Until they knew more, it was best to keep their suspicions contained. Later that evening, after Sophia had retired to her usual guest suite in the penthouse, James and Rose reconvened in his private study. "What do you make of all this?" James asked, returning to their earlier conversation. "I think someone deliberately suppressed research that could have treated your condition. Whether they caused the illness is another question entirely, but they certainly ensured you wouldn't find a cure through conventional means. And you believe Richard is involved?" Rose chose her words carefully. "His signature is on key documents, but that doesn't mean he understood the implications. He might have been manipulated, or he might be the mastermind. We need more information." James nodded thoughtfully. "Tomorrow, I want you to access the records for Nexus Therapeutics. Find out who brokered that acquisition and where their key researchers ended up." "I can do that. But James, there's something else we need to consider." Rose's expression grew more serious. "If someone did deliberately ensure you wouldn't be cured, they might not be happy about your improving condition. We need to be careful." "You think I'm in danger beyond my illness?" "I think we both might be if the wrong people realize what we're doing." As if to underscore her point, James's private security system chimed with an alert. Someone had attempted to access his study through the executive elevator, an access point that only a handful of people had clearance to use. James quickly checked the security feed. "It's Richard. What is he doing here at this hour?" Rose quickly gathered her laptop and notes. "I should go. He can't find us meeting like this." "Use the private exit through the bedroom," James instructed, pointing to a hidden door disguised as part of the wall. "It leads to the service elevator." As Rose hurried toward the exit, she turned back briefly. "Be careful what you say to him. We don't know how much he suspects." James nodded, arranging himself casually in his chair as if he had been sitting alone. The moment Rose disappeared, he called out, "Come in, Richard." The door opened and Richard Mercer entered, looking surprised to find James awake and alert at such a late hour. "James, I didn't expect you to be up." Richard glanced around the study as if looking for something, or someone. "I was just checking in before heading home. Security told me you were still awake." "Couldn't sleep," James replied easily. "Too many thoughts about the future." Richard smiled, pulling up a chair. "That's a good sign. A month ago, you weren't thinking beyond the next day." "Amazing what a little hope can do," James remarked, studying his old friend closely. Was that a flicker of discomfort in Richard's eyes? "Rose's treatments are working better than anyone expected." "Yes, about that." Richard leaned forward. "I've been doing some digging into Ms. Johnson's background." James felt a prickle of alarm but kept his expression neutral. "Oh. She wasn't just any researcher at Wilcor. She was developing some rather unconventional treatments." Treatments that were deemed unsafe by our review board. Is that so? James asked mildly. The report cited unpredictable side effects and insufficient clinical data. That's why her program was terminated. Richard paused. I'm concerned she might be using you as a test subject for treatments that couldn't pass proper medical scrutiny. James considered his response carefully. And you're only bringing this to my attention now? After weeks of noticeable improvement in my condition? Richard shifted uncomfortably. I only just connected the dots. The name was familiar, but it took time to locate the old records. I see. James tapped his fingers on the armrest. Well, I appreciate your concern, but I think I'll continue with the current treatment plan. The results speak for themselves. James, be reasonable. She could be doing more harm than good in the long run. Let me arrange for a proper medical team to analyze whatever she's giving you. The request seemed innocent enough, but James now viewed it through a lens of suspicion. Was Richard trying to get access to Rose's formula to suppress it further? Or perhaps to replicate it and take credit? That won't be necessary, James said firmly. But speaking of Wilcor, I've included them in our newest compliance audit. Standard procedure, nothing to worry about. Richard's reaction was subtle but unmistakable, a tightening around the eyes, a momentary stillness. Any particular reason why? Just being thorough. After my brush with mortality, I want to make sure all parts of the business are running as they should. Of course. Richard stood, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Well, I should let you rest. It's late. Good night, Richard. After Richard left, James waited 15 minutes before texting Rose. Coast clear. But we need to move faster. He's asking questions about you and the audit. Rose's reply came instantly, already on it. Be careful. I'll see you in the morning. As James prepared for bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that the game had changed. What had begun as a search for answers about his illness now felt increasingly like a dangerous chess match where the stakes were literally life and death. And he wasn't entirely sure who all the players were yet. The next morning, James woke to find Rose already in his penthouse, but she wasn't alone. Sophia was with her, the two women deep in conversation over coffee. Good morning, James said, surprised to see them together. You're both up early. Sophia grinned. Rose was telling me about her background in botanical medicine. Fascinating. Did you know she spent 6 months in the Amazon studying plants that indigenous healers have used for centuries? I didn't, James said, giving Rose a questioning look. How much had she shared with Sophia? Just the basics of my research, Rose explained, reading his expression. Sophia was curious about your treatment. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. The way she approaches medicine is incredible, Uncle James. Combining traditional knowledge with modern science. It makes so much sense. James relaxed slightly, pouring himself coffee. It does seem to be working. Actually, Rose interjected, I was just telling Sophia that we need to retrieve some additional research materials from a secure location. It might help us finalize the treatment. The safety deposit box? James asked. Rose nodded. I'd like to go today if possible. The sooner we have those notes, the better. I'll come with you, Sophia offered immediately. Uncle James probably shouldn't be out and about too much, and you shouldn't go alone if these materials are as important as you say. James and Rose exchanged glances. They hadn't planned on involving Sophia, but her offer made sense from a practical standpoint. And if they were going to retrieve sensitive materials, having another trusted person might be useful. That's very kind of you, Sophia, Rose said. If your uncle approves? Of course, James agreed. But be careful, both of you. And keep me updated. After the women left, James decided to do some investigating of his own. Using his executive access codes, he logged into Wilcor's secure server to look for additional information on the Nexus Therapeutics acquisition. If Richard had been involved, there would be a paper trail. Meanwhile, Rose and Sophia arrived at the bank where Rose's grandmother had kept the safety deposit box. After verifying her identity and completing the necessary paperwork, they were led to a private room with the box. So what exactly are we looking for? Sophia asked as Rose unlocked the box. Research notes, formulas, and samples that couldn't be replicated easily, Rose explained, lifting the lid. When my program was shut down, I knew I needed to preserve the work. These materials represent years of research. Inside the box were several notebooks, USB drives, and sealed containers with dried plant samples. Rose carefully removed each item, explaining its significance to Sophia, who seemed genuinely interested. This is amazing, Sophia said, examining one of the notebooks. You documented everything so meticulously. Science requires precision, Rose replied, organizing the items into her bag. Especially when working with natural compounds that can vary in potency. As they were preparing to leave, Rose's phone buzzed with a text from James. Found something. Richard signed off on Nexus acquisition personally. Bypassed normal review process. Come back ASAP. Rose's expression grew serious. We need to get back to your uncle right away. He's found something important. They hurried out of the bank and into the waiting car. As they drove through the city, Sophia asked, "Is everything okay? You seem worried." Rose hesitated, unsure how much to share. "We're investigating some irregularities related to your uncle's illness and my former research. It's complicated." Sophia's expression shifted slightly. "You think someone deliberately suppressed treatments that could have helped him?" Rose looked at her sharply. "What makes you say that?" "It's the logical conclusion," Sophia said calmly. "Uncle James gets sick with a mysterious illness that stumps the best doctors. You, a researcher who was working on relevant treatments, get fired and your work buried. Then you find your way back to him and start healing him with the very treatments that were suppressed." She shrugged. "It doesn't take a genius to see there might be foul play involved." Rose studied the younger woman with new appreciation. Sophia was clearly more perceptive than she had initially given her credit for. "Yes, that's what we suspect. And we think we might know who was involved." "Richard," Sophia guessed. When Rose looked surprised, she added, "He's been acting strange since I got back. Too interested in your treatment methods, too concerned about Uncle James making a full recovery. Plus, he's the only one besides me who benefits significantly if Uncle James dies." "How so?" "Richard gets control of the company until I'm ready to take over, according to the will. That could be years of effective control. And knowing Richard, he'd find ways to make that arrangement permanent." The car pulled up to James's building and they hurried inside, taking the private elevator to the penthouse. But when they entered, they found the main room empty. "Uncle James?" Sophia called out. There was no answer. Rose moved quickly to the study where she had left James earlier, pushing open the door. The room was in disarray, papers scattered, a chair overturned, and James's laptop open on the desk. "Something's wrong," Rose said, alarm rising in her voice. "He wouldn't leave the penthouse without telling us, especially after that text." Sophia was already checking the other rooms. "His bedroom's empty too. And his phone is still here." She held up James's personal device. "He never goes anywhere without this." Rose returned to the study, examining the laptop screen. It showed Wilcore's financial records from 3 years ago, specifically the details of the Nexus acquisition. There was a document pulled up showing Richard's signature on the final approval, dated just 2 weeks after James's first abnormal test results. "He found proof," Rose said grimly. "And now he's gone." Sophia joined her, looking at the screen. "You think Richard took him? But why now? Why not weeks ago before you started helping him?" Rose's mind raced. "Because now James is improving. He's no longer certain to die from his illness. And if he recovers completely, Richard loses everything," Sophia finished. "He'd be exposed, possibly face criminal charges." Rose began gathering the scattered papers. "We need to find them. Fast." "But how? They could be anywhere." Rose paused, a thought occurring to her. "Not anywhere. If Richard wants to ensure James doesn't recover, he'd need to take him somewhere private, somewhere he could control the situation." She turned to Sophia. "Does your family own any properties that aren't widely known? Places Richard might have access to?" Sophia's eyes widened. "The lake house. It's about 2 hours upstate, very isolated. Our family used it for vacations when I was young, but it hasn't been used much in recent years. Richard knows about it, he's been there for corporate retreats." "That's our best bet," Rose decided. "But we should be careful. If Richard is desperate enough to kidnap James, he's dangerous." "Shouldn't we call the police?" Sophia asked. Rose shook her head. "With what evidence? A missing billionaire who left no signs of struggle, whose COO has every legal right to meet with him. We'd waste precious time trying to convince them. No, we need to handle this ourselves." She opened her bag containing the research materials they'd just retrieved. "And I need to prepare something first. If James has been without his medicine for hours, his symptoms will be returning. He'll need a stronger dose than usual." Sophia watched as Rose efficiently combined various dried plants and extracts into a small container. "You really care about him, don't you? Beyond just wanting to prove your research works." Rose's hands stilled momentarily. "I do. It started as a mission to reclaim my work, but now... She shook her head. Let's focus on finding him first. Within 30 minutes, they were in Sophia's car, racing toward the lake house. Rose had prepared a double dose of James's medicine and packed the most critical research materials. As they drove, Sophia made casual conversation, clearly trying to keep their spirits up despite the tension. So, what happens after you cure my uncle? Will you go back to your research full-time? That's the plan, Rose replied, keeping her eyes on the road ahead. With proper funding and recognition this time. You could have demanded anything from him, you know. With the leverage you had, holding the only treatment that works. Yet you just asked for your research to be reinstated. Why? The question caught Rose off guard. Because that's all I ever wanted. The chance to help people with my work. Your uncle's recovery is the proof I need to make that happen. Sophia smiled. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone more calculating, perhaps. Uncle James isn't known for trusting people easily, especially since he got sick. Yet he trusted you almost immediately. Rose considered this. I think we recognized something in each other. A certain kind of determination, maybe? As they neared the lake house, Sophia directed them onto increasingly remote roads until finally they turned onto a private drive hidden by trees. In the distance, they could see a large rustic building overlooking a serene lake. Richard's car is here, Sophia whispered, pointing to a black sedan parked near the entrance. We were right. Rose parked a distance away, hidden by trees. We need to be smart about this. We don't know if he's alone or what condition your uncle is in. There's a back entrance through the boathouse, Sophia suggested. We used it as kids to sneak out at night. It leads directly to the lower level of the house. Rose nodded. Perfect. Lead the way. They made their way quietly through the woods surrounding the property until they reached the boathouse at the edge of the lake. The door was locked, but Sophia knew where a spare key was hidden. Inside, they found a narrow passageway leading up to the main house. As they crept closer, they began to hear voices, Richard's distinctive authoritative tone, and then James's voice, weaker but still defiant. You won't get away with this, Richard. People will ask questions when I die suddenly. People expect you to die, James. That's the beauty of it. You've been terminal for months. No one will be surprised when your condition deteriorates rapidly. Rose knows the truth. She has evidence. Richard laughed coldly. A disgruntled former employee with a personal vendetta? Who would believe her over me? I've been by your side for 20 years. I built this company with you. And now you want to take it from me. I deserve it. Richard's voice rose angrily. I've done all the work for years while you got all the glory. And what's your grand plan? Hand everything over to Sophia? She's barely out of college. Rose and Sophia exchanged glances as they continued to move silently toward the voices, which were coming from what appeared to be the main living area of the house. Why did you do it, Richard? James asked, his voice sounding strained. The illness. Was it your doing from the start? There was a pause and then Richard's chilling response. Not intentionally, no. That was just fortunate timing. But when I realized what was happening to you, when I saw the early test results, I made sure you wouldn't find a cure. Every promising research avenue, every potential treatment, I buried them all. Rose motioned for Sophia to stay back as they reached a point where they could see into the room without being seen. James was sitting in a chair, looking pale and weak, his hands tied to the armrests. Richard stood over him, holding what appeared to be a syringe. And what's that? James nodded toward the syringe. Something to speed things along? Just a sedative, Richard replied calmly. To keep you comfortable while nature takes its course. Without your miracle cure, your symptoms should return with a vengeance within 24 hours. I just need to keep you here, away from Rose and her treatments, until it's too late. Rose knew they needed to act quickly. James's deteriorating condition was visible even from a distance. His breathing was labored, and his complexion had taken on the sickly pallor she remembered from when she first started treating him. She turned to Sophia, whispering, I need to get my medicine to him soon. Can you create a distraction? Sophia nodded determinedly. Without hesitation, she stepped out from their hiding place and walked directly into the room. Hello, Richard, she said calmly. Looking for me too? Richard spun around, shock evident on his face. Sophia, what are you doing here? Saving my uncle, she replied simply. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? As Richard's attention was fully on Sophia, Rose slipped around the edge of the room, making her way toward James. Their eyes met briefly and she saw relief wash over his face. You're making a mistake, Sophia, Richard said, his voice hardening as he moved toward her, syringe still in hand. You don't understand what's at stake here. I understand perfectly, Sophia countered, backing away slowly, drawing Richard further from James. You tried to kill my uncle for money and power. It's not complicated. While this confrontation unfolded, Rose reached James and quickly began untying his restraints. I have your medicine, she whispered, pulling the container from her pocket. Double strength. You need it now. James nodded weakly and Rose helped him drink the prepared formula. As she worked, she kept one eye on Sophia and Richard, who were still engaged in their tense standoff. You'll never get away with this, Richard was saying. No one will believe your story. It will be your word against mine, and I have decades of credibility in this company. Actually, Rose called out, standing up beside James's chair, it won't be just her word. It will be mine, James's, and the evidence we've already secured from Wilcore's records. Richard turned, his face contorting with rage when he saw Rose. You. Haven't you caused enough trouble? The only one causing trouble here is you, Richard, James said, his voice already sounding stronger as the medicine began to take effect. It's over. We know everything. Richard looked from James to Rose to Sophia, the reality of his situation clearly dawning on him. In a sudden moment of desperation, he lunged toward James, the syringe raised. But Sophia was faster. She grabbed a heavy bookend from a nearby shelf and swung it at Richard's arm, causing him to drop the syringe. He stumbled backward, clutching his injured arm. You ungrateful little, he began, but was cut short as James rose from his chair, steadier than anyone expected, and delivered a solid punch to Richard's jaw. The older man collapsed to the floor, unconscious. That felt good, James remarked, shaking out his hand. Been wanting to do that for about 24 hours now. Rose couldn't help but smile as she checked Richard's pulse. He's fine. Just knocked out. Sophia, is there anything we can use to restrain him until the authorities arrive? There's rope in the boathouse, Sophia replied, already moving toward the door. I'll get it. When they were alone, James turned to Rose. You came for me. Of course I did, she said simply. We're in this together now. James studied her face. You risked everything. If Richard had caught you? Some things are worth the risk. Her eyes met his. Your life is one of them. For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Then James reached out and took her hand in his. Thank you, he said softly. Not just for saving my life today but for giving me a reason to fight for it again. Rose squeezed his hand gently. The fight isn't over yet. We still need to complete the treatment and make sure Richard faces justice for what he's done. We will, James assured her. Together. As Sophia returned with the rope, they set about securing Richard and calling the authorities. The day's events had brought them all closer, forging a bond of trust and shared purpose that none of them had expected. And as the golden afternoon light filtered through the windows of the lake house, turning everything it touched to amber, Rose found herself wondering what would happen after James was fully cured, after the danger had passed and her research was reinstated. Would there still be a place for her in his world? Or would their paths diverge once their common goal was achieved? She pushed the thought aside for now. There would be time for such questions later. For now, she was simply grateful that they had found James in time, that her medicine was working, and that the truth was finally coming to light. The rest could wait. 3 days after the confrontation at the lake house, James was back in his penthouse, feeling stronger than he had in months. The double dose of Rose's medicine had not only countered the effects of his mistreatments but seemed to have accelerated his improvement. Richard was in custody, facing multiple charges including attempted murder and corporate fraud, after a thorough investigation revealed the extent of his machinations. The morning sun streamed through the windows as James, Rose, and Sophia gathered around the dining table, surrounded by documents and research materials. They had spent the last few days planning their next steps. So the audit confirmed everything, Sophia said, reviewing the final report. Richard systematically shut down all research that could have helped treat your condition, and he did it just days after your first symptoms appeared. James nodded grimly. And he admitted to the rest during his interrogation. He didn't cause my illness, that was just terrible luck, but he made sure I wouldn't find a cure. When Rose started working here and my condition improved, he panicked. With good reason, Rose added, organizing her research notes. The treatment is working even better than I expected. Your latest blood work shows significant improvement in all markers. But it's not a complete cure yet, James reminded them. You said yourself the current formula is only managing the symptoms and slowing the progression. Rose smiled, a hint of excitement in her eyes. That's what I wanted to show you both today. With the materials we recovered from the safety deposit box and the additional data from Wilcore's records, I think I can develop a complete treatment. Something that would eradicate the disease entirely, not just manage it. Sophia leaned forward eagerly. Really? That's incredible. It will take time, Rose cautioned. And resources. We need a proper laboratory setup, a small team of trusted researchers, and access to rare botanical specimens from several regions. Whatever you need, James said without hesitation. The entire Wilson Pharmaceutical Division is at your disposal. I've already replaced the leadership there with people I personally vetted. Rose looked uncertain. Are you sure that's wise? Working within your corporate structure is what got my research suppressed in the first place. This time will be different, James assured her. I'll be directly involved. No decisions about your research will be made without your approval. And I'll be watching too, Sophia added firmly. Uncle James is giving me an official position overseeing special projects, including yours. No one will interfere with your work again. Rose seemed touched by their support. Thank you. Both of you. James stood up, moving to the window. His movements were noticeably more fluid, less pained than they had been even a week ago. There's something else we need to discuss. The broader implications of your research, Rose. What do you mean? She asked. Your treatment isn't just helping me. It could potentially help thousands, maybe millions of people with similar immune disorders. This goes beyond just saving my life. Rose nodded slowly. That was always the goal of my research. To develop treatments from natural sources that could help people who haven't responded to conventional medicine. Then we need to think bigger, James said, turning back to face them. A new research institute, independent but well-funded. Focusing on your work but expanded to include other promising natural medicine approaches. Something that can't be shut down or suppressed by corporate interests. Sophia's eyes widened. The Johnson Institute for Botanical Medicine. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Rose looked stunned. You'd name it after me? Why not? James asked. It's your research, your vision. I'm just providing the resources to make it happen. I don't know what to say, Rose admitted, clearly overwhelmed by the suggestion. Say yes, Sophia encouraged. You deserve this after everything that happened. Rose took a deep breath. Yes. But on one condition, that we make the treatments accessible to everyone who needs them, not just those who can afford to pay. James smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. In fact, I've been thinking about restructuring how my medical companies operate generally. This experience has been enlightening in many ways. The three of them spent the rest of the morning outlining plans for both Rose's complete treatment for James and the broader institute. There was an energy in the room, a sense of purpose that went beyond just saving one man's life. They were planning something that could change the landscape of medicine itself. As they worked, James found himself watching Rose, the intensity of her focus as she explained complex biochemical processes, the passion in her voice when she talked about helping patients who had been told there were no options left. She had entered his life as a cleaner, became his healer, and now was helping reshape his understanding of what his wealth and influence could accomplish. Later that afternoon, when Sophia had left to begin setting up meetings with potential institute partners, James and Rose found themselves alone in the penthouse study. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, James said, pouring them both tea, another of Rose's herbal blends that had become a daily ritual. That first day when you came to work, as my cleaner, did you plan to reveal your identity eventually? Or were you just gathering information? Rose accepted the tea thoughtfully. Honestly, I didn't have a clear plan. I knew who you were, of course, and I suspected your illness might be related to my research. But I didn't know if I could help you or if you'd even listen to me. What changed? You gave me your black card, she said with a small smile. It was such an unexpected act of trust, or recklessness, that it forced my hand. I saw an opportunity and took it. I'm glad you did, James said quietly. Even if my reasons were less than noble at the time. What were your reasons? Rose asked curiously. You never really explained why you gave a complete stranger unlimited access to your fortune. James considered the question. I told myself it was an experiment to see what would happen. But looking back, I think I was just tired. Tired of being surrounded by people who saw me as either a dying man to be pitied or an obstacle to their ambitions. You were different. You cleaned my room and adjusted my curtains like I was going to be around to enjoy the sunlight. Small kindnesses matter, Rose said. especially when someone is suffering. They do, James agreed. Though I'm not sure giving someone access to billions of dollars qualifies as a small kindness. They both laughed, and James was struck by how natural it felt, sitting here with her, planning a future he hadn't believed he would have just months ago. Rose, he began hesitantly. When this is all over, when you've developed the complete cure and the institute is up and running, what then? She looked at him curiously. What do you mean? For you personally. What do you want your role to be? Director of Research? Chief Scientist? The institute will be yours to shape however you want. Rose set down her tea, considering the question seriously. I want to be involved in the research directly. That's where my passion is, in the lab, working with plants and compounds, seeing the results firsthand. But I also want to train others to share the knowledge I've gathered. So perhaps something that allows me to do both. And James hesitated again, feeling uncharacteristically uncertain. Would you continue to work closely with me? Or would you prefer more independence? Rose studied his face, seeming to understand the real question beneath his words. I would like to continue working with you, James. In whatever capacity makes sense. Just working? He asked softly. A slight blush colored her cheeks. That would depend on what other capacities you might be considering. Before James could respond, his phone rang, Sophia calling with an update on the institute plans. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of possibilities beyond their current roles as patient and healer. As James took the call, Rose moved to the window looking out at the city below. From here, everything looked small, buildings, people, cars, all reduced to miniature versions of themselves. But she knew the reality on the ground was complex, vibrant, full of stories like hers and James's. Stories of struggle and resilience, of unexpected connections and second chances. Whatever happened between them personally, she was grateful for this chance to reclaim her work and expand it beyond what she had ever imagined possible. The Johnson Institute could help countless people, could validate traditional healing practices that had been dismissed by conventional medicine for too long. And James Wilson, the billionaire who had handed her his black card in what might have been the last reckless act of a dying man, would be by her side as they built it together. It wasn't the future she had envisioned when she first applied for the cleaning position in his penthouse. It was better. 6 weeks had passed since the confrontation with Richard, and the transformation in James's life was remarkable. The penthouse that had once felt like a luxurious prison now buzzed with activity and purpose. The temporary laboratory set up in what used to be a rarely used guest wing was fully operational, staffed with a small team of researchers personally vetted by Rose. James had resumed limited work duties, participating in video conferences and making key decisions, though he still delegated much of the day-to-day operations. His recovery continued steadily, with each week bringing noticeable improvements in his strength and stamina. Today was particularly significant. Rose and her team had been working around the clock on the enhanced formula that they hoped would not just manage James's symptoms but eliminate the disease entirely. The initial tests looked promising, and they were ready to begin the final phase of treatment. James sat in what had become the main treatment room, watching as Rose carefully prepared the new medicine. Her movements were precise, confident, a scientist in her element. Nervous? She asked, glancing up at him. A little, he admitted. It's one thing to manage a condition indefinitely. It's another to believe it might be gone completely. Rose nodded, understanding. The human body is remarkably complex. There are no guarantees even with all our research. But the preliminary results are the most promising I've ever seen. I trust you, James said simply. Those 3 words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond medical confidence. Over these weeks of working closely together, their relationship had deepened in ways neither had fully acknowledged aloud. Rose completed her preparations and approached with a small glass containing a liquid similar to his daily medicine but with a deeper hue. This is different from your regular doses, she explained. The enhanced formula contains compounds that specifically target the root cause of your condition, not just the symptoms. You'll need to take it daily for 2 weeks and we'll monitor your response closely. James took the glass from her, their fingers brushing briefly. To new beginnings, he said, raising it slightly before drinking the contents. To new beginnings, Rose echoed softly. The door opened and Sophia entered, carrying several folders. Sorry I'm late. The zoning commission had questions about the environmental impact of the institute. She noticed the empty glass in James's hand. Is that it? The new treatment. Just took the first dose, James confirmed. Sophia grinned. Historic moment. How do you feel? Exactly the same as 5 minutes ago, James replied dryly. Miracle cures take time, apparently. Speaking of the institute, Rose said, turning to Sophia. How are the plans progressing? Better than expected, Sophia reported, spreading the folders on a nearby table. We've secured the location, 50 acres just outside the city, with plenty of room for both research facilities and botanical gardens. The architectural plans are being finalized now. James joined them at the table, examining the preliminary designs. The Johnson Institute for Botanical Medicine was taking shape as a striking modern complex surrounded by carefully planned gardens where medicinal plants from around the world would be grown and studied. It's beautiful, Rose said, studying the renderings. I never imagined anything like this when I was working in that small lab at Wilcor. It's just the beginning, James assured her. Once we publish the results of my case study, there will be widespread interest in your methods. We've already received inquiries from medical researchers in 12 countries. And that's without any public announcements yet, Sophia added. We've been deliberately quiet until we can prove the complete treatment works. Rose looked momentarily overwhelmed. It's happening so fast. 6 months ago I was cleaning floors and dreaming of somehow getting back to my research. Now this. James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You earned this, Rose. Your persistence, your knowledge, your compassion. You never gave up even when the entire system was against you. Their eyes met, and Sophia cleared her throat theatrically. I just remembered I have another meeting. I'll leave you two to discuss treatment protocols. With a knowing smile, she gathered her folders and left the room. Alone again, James and Rose shared a laugh at Sophia's transparent excuse. She's not exactly subtle, James noted. No, but she's been incredibly supportive, Rose replied. I couldn't have asked for a better ally in all this. She likes you, James said simply. So do I, for that matter. Rose's eyes softened. I like you too, James. Rather more than I should, professionally speaking. I think we moved beyond a strictly professional relationship when you saved my life, he pointed out. Twice if we're counting. True, she acknowledged with a smile. Though that does raise questions about what happens next. With the institute taking shape and your treatment promising full recovery, my role as your personal healer is becoming less necessary. James moved closer to her. I was rather hoping you might consider a different role in my life. What did you have in mind? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before he could answer, one of the lab assistants burst into the room, excitement written across her face. Dr. Johnson. The results from the latest molecular binding tests are in. You need to see this immediately. Rose gave James an apologetic look before following the assistant to the lab. James smiled to himself, recognizing that some interruptions were worth the wait. Their personal conversation could continue later. The potential breakthrough in her research took priority now. That evening, after the excitement in the lab had settled, Rose found James on the penthouse terrace, gazing at the sunset painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. Sorry about earlier, she said, joining him at the railing. Important news? He asked. Rose's face lit up with barely contained excitement. Potentially revolutionary. The molecular binding tests show that the enhanced formula is targeting the disease markers with unprecedented precision. If these results translate to human application, to your treatment, we could be looking at complete remission within weeks, not months. That's wonderful news, James said sincerely. It is, Rose agreed. But that's not all. She hesitated, then continued. The tests revealed something we hadn't anticipated. The formula doesn't just target your specific condition. It has applications for a whole class of immune disorders. Conditions that affect millions of people worldwide. James turned to face her fully. You've discovered more than just my cure. It seems that way, she nodded, her eyes shining. My grandmother's traditional remedies, combined with modern scientific methods, might change treatment protocols for conditions that have stumped conventional medicine for decades. The institute will be even more important than we thought, James realized. Yes. We'll need to expand our research team, conduct broader clinical trials. Rose's mind was clearly racing with possibilities. James reached out and took her hand, bringing her focus back to the present moment. This is your legacy, Rose. A gift to the world that started with you trying to help one stubborn billionaire. She laughed softly. A stubborn billionaire who took a chance on his cleaner. Best reckless decision I ever made, James murmured, drawing her closer. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared below the horizon, they stood together at the edge of not just a physical precipice overlooking the city, but at the threshold of something new and profoundly meaningful for them both. 3 months later, the first phase of the Johnson Institute for Botanical Medicine was completed. The main research building stood proudly amid carefully landscaped gardens where medicinal plants from around the world were already taking root. Inside, state-of-the-art laboratories hummed with activity as researchers explored the potential of Rose's groundbreaking formulas. But today the institute was quiet. Most of the staff had been given the day off to prepare for tomorrow's grand opening ceremony. Only Rose remained, walking through the empty laboratories, taking a moment to absorb how far they had come. She paused at a window overlooking the central garden, where a statue was being installed. A bronze representation of hands cradling a small plant, symbolizing the marriage of traditional healing wisdom and modern science that formed the Institute's foundation. The plaque at its base read, "In honor of those who kept ancient knowledge alive, so that it might heal future generations." "What do you think?" James's voice came from behind her. Rose turned to find him standing in the doorway looking healthy and vital, a far cry from the pale, weakened man she had first met nearly a year ago. His final blood tests had come back the previous week, showing no trace of the disease that had once threatened his life. The enhanced treatment had worked exactly as they had hoped. "It's perfect," she said, gesturing to the statue. "A beautiful reminder of why we're doing this work." James joined her at the window. Sophia insisted on the statue. Said we needed something symbolic at the heart of the Institute. She was right, Rose nodded. Science needs heart to give it purpose. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as workers made final adjustments to the installation below. "Nervous about tomorrow?" James asked eventually. Rose took a deep breath. "A little. I'm not used to being in the spotlight. When I was developing these treatments in my small lab at Wilcor, I never imagined standing on a stage in front of media outlets from around the world." "You'll be brilliant," James assured her. "Just speak from your heart about the work. That's what people need to hear." Rose glanced at him gratefully. "Will you be standing with me?" "Every step of the way," he promised. "Though I think tomorrow is really your moment. The world needs to see that this institute is your vision, not just another wealthy man's project." "It's our vision now," Rose corrected him gently. "I may have had the knowledge, but you provided the means to make it a reality. Neither of us could have done this alone." "True enough," James acknowledged. "We make a good team." "We do," Rose agreed, her voice softening. "In more ways than one." The past 3 months had seen their relationship evolve beyond professional collaboration. As James's health returned and the institute took shape, they had grown closer, finding in each other not just mutual respect but genuine affection and understanding. Their different backgrounds, he from a world of immense privilege, she from humble beginnings, seemed to complement rather than divide them. "Actually," James said, reaching into his pocket, "I wanted to give you something before tomorrow's chaos." He pulled out a small velvet box and handed it to Rose. She opened it carefully to find not jewelry as she had half expected, but a key. "What's this for?" she asked, confused. "The original lake house," James explained. "Where Richard took me that day. I've had it renovated and converted into a private retreat center for patients receiving treatment at the Institute. People who need somewhere peaceful to recover, away from hospitals and clinical settings." Rose looked up at him, deeply moved. "You've transformed a place of fear into one of healing. That seems to be our specialty," James smiled. "The key is symbolic, of course. The retreat center belongs to the Institute. But I wanted you to be the first to hold it, since you were the one who found me there." "Thank you," Rose said simply, closing her fingers around the key. "For everything." James took her free hand in his. "I should be thanking you. You gave me back my life, Rose. Not just by treating my illness but by showing me a different way to use my resources, my influence." "You made that choice yourself," she reminded him. "You could have taken the treatment and continued as before." "No," James shook his head. "After experiencing what it's like to face death, to be truly vulnerable, I couldn't go back to seeing the world the same way. And after meeting you, someone who gave up everything for their principles, who uses their knowledge to help others regardless of profit, how could I not want to be better?" Rose felt a warmth spreading through her chest at his words. This man, who had once handed her his black card in a moment of reckless resignation, had become someone she admired deeply, someone she loved. The thought no longer startled her as it once had. Their journey together had been unusual from the start, cleaner and billionaire, healer and patient, now partners in creating something meaningful that would outlast them both. "There's something else I've been wanting to ask you," James said, his tone growing more serious. Something I've been thinking about for a while now. Rose looked at him expectantly, her heart quickening slightly at his expression. The institute is established. My health is restored. We've accomplished what we set out to do together, he began. But I find myself hoping that this isn't the end of our story. That we might begin a new chapter. One that's not about cures or institutes or business, but simply about us. What kind of chapter did you have in mind? Rose asked softly, though she suspected she knew the answer. James smiled, the warmth in his eyes reflecting what she felt in her own heart. One where we explore what we've found in each other, away from the pressures of life-threatening illness and corporate intrigue. Where we see if this connection between us is as remarkable as I believe it to be. I'd like that, Rose replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Very much. He leaned forward, his hand gently touching her cheek, and their lips met in a kiss that felt both inevitable and remarkable, the natural progression of a journey that had begun in the most unusual circumstances. When they parted, Rose couldn't help but laugh softly. A year ago I was cleaning your penthouse, and you were a dying man who gave me his black card. Now look at us. Life takes unexpected turns, James agreed with a smile. Sometimes for the better. As they left the institute together, walking hand in hand through the gardens that would soon help heal countless others, Rose marveled at how thoroughly her life had changed. From researcher to cleaner to leader of a groundbreaking medical institute, and now, perhaps, to something even more meaningful. The sun was setting behind them, casting long shadows ahead, a fitting metaphor for the path they had traveled and the future stretching before them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the unlikely pair who had found in each other not just healing but a new beginning. The morning of the Institute's grand opening dawned clear and bright. The newly completed facility gleamed in the early sunlight, its modern architecture blending harmoniously with the natural landscape. Media crews had begun setting up at dawn, and a steady stream of guests, medical professionals, researchers, government officials, and philanthropists, were arriving for the 10 a.m. ceremony. Inside the main building, Rose stood before a mirror in her office, smoothing her dress, a simple but elegant design in deep green that complemented her warm skin tone. It was a far cry from the cleaner's uniform she had worn when she first entered James's life, yet she still recognized herself in the reflection. Success had changed her circumstances but not her essence. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Sophia entered, looking polished and professional in a tailored suit. "Everything's ready. The auditorium is filling up, and the live stream is set to begin in 30 minutes. She studied Rose with an approving smile. "You look perfect." "I feel a bit like an imposter," Rose admitted. "All these distinguished guests coming to hear me speak." "Nonsense," Sophia said firmly. "You're Dr. Rose Johnson, pioneering researcher and founder of a revolutionary approach to medicine. You belong at that podium more than anyone." Rose smiled gratefully. "Thank you for that. And for everything you've done to make this possible. The Institute wouldn't exist without your support." "Family supports family," Sophia said simply, then added with a twinkle in her eye, "which you practically are now, wouldn't you say?" Rose felt her cheeks warm. "James and I are taking things one day at a time." Sophia hummed skeptically. "Is that why he's been walking around with that ridiculous grin for the past month? Because you're taking things one day at a time?" Before Rose could respond, there was another knock, and James himself appeared in the doorway. He looked striking in a dark suit, his restored health evident in his confident stance and clear eyes. "Am I interrupting?" he asked, glancing between the two women. "Not at all," Sophia replied with a mischievous smile. "I was just heading down to greet the health minister. See you both at the ceremony." She squeezed Rose's hand encouragingly as she left, closing the door behind her. "Nervous?" James asked, crossing the room to stand before Rose. "Terrified," she admitted. "But in a good way, I think. Like standing at the edge of something important." "You've been there before," he reminded her gently. "When you decided to apply for that cleaning position. When you took my black card and used it to negotiate a business deal. When you came to find me at the lake house. Courage in the face of uncertainty seems to be one of your defining qualities." Rose smiled at his assessment. "I never thought of myself that way. I just did what needed to be done." "And that's exactly what you'll do today," James assured her. "Tell our story. Share your vision. The rest will follow naturally." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a simple charm on a delicate chain shaped like a leaf. "I wanted you to have this today. It's not fancy or expensive, but it reminded me of where this all began." Your grandmother's remedies, the plants that saved my life. Rose was touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. It's perfect. Would you? She turned, and James fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers warm against her skin. When she faced him again, he took both her hands in his. Before we go out there, I want you to know something. Whatever happens today, whatever comes next for the Institute or for us, meeting you was the most fortunate thing that ever happened to me. Not because you saved my life, although I'm profoundly grateful for that, but because you changed it. For the better. Rose felt tears threatening to form and blinked them back. You changed mine too. You gave me the chance to finish what I started, to help people on a scale I never imagined possible. Partners then, James said softly. In all things. In all things, Rose agreed, squeezing his hands. A gentle chime sounded over the intercom system, the 10-minute warning for the ceremony. Ready to change the world, Dr. Johnson? James asked with a warm smile. As ready as I'll ever be, Mr. Wilson, she replied, matching his tone. They walked together through the corridors of the Institute, passing laboratories where breakthrough treatments would be developed, meeting rooms where knowledge would be shared, and healing gardens where patients would find peace during their recovery. Each space represented a piece of their shared vision, a vision born from the most unlikely of beginnings. As they approached the auditorium, the sounds of the gathered crowd grew louder. Just before they reached the entrance, Rose paused. James, she said quietly, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. He looked at her questioningly. When I first came to work for you, my only goal was to reclaim my research and prove its value. I never expected. She hesitated, searching for the right words. I never expected to find someone who would understand me so completely, who would share not just my professional goals but my perspective on what really matters in life. James's expression softened with understanding. I know. I felt the same surprise. After years of wealth and success, I'd grown cynical about genuine connections. Then you appeared, with your stubborn integrity and your healing hands, and suddenly everything was different. Rose took a deep breath, gathering her courage for what she wanted to say next. What I'm trying to tell you is that I love you, James Wilson. Not the billionaire, not the Institute founder, just you, the man who had enough compassion left in him to give a stranger a chance. The words hung in the air between them, simple but profound. James's face broke into a smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that had become dear to Rose. I love you too, Rose Johnson. The woman who cleaned my house, saved my life, and then decided to stick around and see if I was worth her time. Rose laughed, the tension of the moment breaking into joy. You definitely are. Though you can be quite stubborn about taking your medicine. Only at the beginning, he protested good-naturedly. I'm a model patient now. True, she conceded, reaching up to straighten his tie. You've certainly exceeded expectations. The final chime sounded, indicating it was time for them to take their places for the ceremony. With one last shared smile, full of new promises and possibilities, they entered the auditorium together, greeted by enthusiastic applause from the assembled guests. The stage was set with a simple podium before a large screen displaying the Institute's logo, a stylized plant emerging from cupped hands, encircled by the words Johnson Institute for Botanical Medicine, honoring ancient wisdom, embracing modern science. As James delivered the opening remarks, introducing Rose to the audience and briefly outlining the story of his own recovery, she watched him with quiet pride. This was the man who had trusted her when he had every reason not to, who had given her the resources to prove what she had always known to be true, that nature held healing secrets that science was only beginning to understand. When it was her turn to speak, Rose approached the podium with steady steps, the small leaf charm resting against her collarbone like a talisman. She looked out at the sea of expectant faces, researchers, doctors, media, potential patients, and began to share their story. She spoke of traditional knowledge preserved through generations, of plants with healing properties yet to be fully explored by modern medicine. She described her journey from academic researcher to cleaner and back to scientist, carefully framing the story to protect James's privacy while emphasizing the scientific breakthrough they had achieved together. As she outlined the Institute's mission and future research directions, Rose felt a profound sense of having come full circle. The dream that had been taken from her had returned in a form more magnificent than she could have imagined. And along the way, she had found not just professional vindication but personal fulfillment in the most unexpected of places. The ceremony concluded with the official ribbon cutting, performed jointly by Rose and James, symbolizing their partnership in this venture. As camera flashes captured the moment, James whispered in her ear, "Beginning of a new chapter." Rose smiled, knowing he meant not just for the institute but for them as well. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. The cleaner who became a healer and the billionaire who found his true wealth in being healed. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the media had filed their stories, Rose and James stood alone in the central garden of the institute. The statue of hands cradling a plant was illuminated by soft lights, casting gentle shadows across the newly planted beds where medicinal herbs from around the world were beginning to take root. "What are you thinking?" James asked, his arm around her shoulders as they contemplated their creation. "I'm thinking about my grandmother," Rose replied softly. "How she taught me to respect these plants, to understand their power. How she always said that true healing comes from both the medicine and the intention behind it." She looked up at him. "She would have liked you, I think." "I wish I could have met her," James said sincerely. "To thank her for passing down the knowledge that saved my life." "In a way, you're thanking her through this," Rose gestured to the institute surrounding them. "Every person who finds healing here will be part of her legacy too." James nodded thoughtfully. "And part of ours." The word ours settled comfortably between them, a simple acknowledgement of the bond they now shared. What had begun as an employer-employee relationship, evolved into healer and patient, then partners in a shared mission, had finally become something more personal and profound. A connection built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine love. As they walked together through the garden that symbolized their journey, Rose reflected on the strange path that had led her here. From losing everything to finding more than she had ever dreamed possible. From cleaning the floors of a dying billionaire to standing beside him in perfect health, building a future that would touch countless lives. All because one day, in a moment of desperation or inspiration, James Wilson had handed his black card to his cleaner, setting in motion a chain of events that neither of them could have anticipated. Some might call it fate. Others might see it as the logical outcome of two determined people finding a common purpose. Rose preferred to think of it simply as life's remarkable capacity for unexpected second chances. And as the evening stars appeared above them, she silently thanked whatever forces had brought them together, the cleaner and the billionaire, the healer and the healed, and led them to this moment of shared triumph and quiet joy. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected. It was better. 5 years later, the gardens of the Johnson Institute were in full bloom, creating a vibrant backdrop for the celebration taking place in its central courtyard. White chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing an arch decorated with medicinal flowers and herbs, a fitting tribute to the journey that had brought everyone together today. It was the 5th anniversary of the Institute's founding, but today was special for another reason. James Wilson and Rose Johnson had chosen this date to renew their wedding vows, surrounded by those who had been part of their remarkable story. In the 3 years since their intimate wedding ceremony, held in these same gardens with only Sophia and a few close friends in attendance, life had unfolded in beautiful and unexpected ways for the couple. Near the front row, their 2-year-old daughter Lily sat on Sophia's lap, fidgeting with the flower crown on her dark curls. At just 2, she already showed signs of inheriting her mother's gentle determination and her father's curious intelligence. Next to them, cradled in the arms of Rose's trusted assistant, was 6-month-old Thomas, named after Rose's grandfather who had first taught her grandmother about healing plants. As guests took their seats, the Institute's achievements were visible all around them. What had begun as a single building surrounded by gardens had expanded into a comprehensive campus with research facilities, treatment centers, and educational spaces. Patients from around the world now came to benefit from the unique approach to healing that combined traditional plant-based remedies with cutting-edge science. But perhaps the most significant success story stood at the edge of the garden, waiting for the ceremony to begin. James adjusted his tie nervously, looking more like an anxious groom than a man who had been happily married for 3 years. "Do I look all right?" he asked the man beside him. Dr. Martin Chin, the Institute's director of clinical research, smiled at his friend's uncharacteristic anxiety. "For the 5th time, yes. Rose will be just as impressed as she was on your first wedding day." "That was smaller," James reminded him. "Just family. This is a celebration of everything you've built together," Martin finished for him. "Both the Institute and your family." James nodded, his eyes scanning the assembled guests. Researchers who had been part of Rose's original team at Wilcor, now leading their own departments at the Institute. Patients whose lives had been transformed by treatments developed here. Medical professionals who had once been skeptical but now partnered with the Institute to bring integrated healing approaches to traditional hospitals. And at the center of it all, the family they had created together. something James had never imagined for himself during his years of single-minded business building, and certainly not during those dark months when he thought his life was ending. The music changed, signaling the start of the ceremony. James took his position under the flower-adorned arch, his heart beating faster as he waited for Rose to appear. When she did, walking slowly down the garden path in a simple white dress with Lily now holding her hand, James felt the same rush of emotion he had experienced the first time he saw her this way. Rose's face lit up with a smile as their eyes met, and little Lily broke away to run toward her father, who scooped her up into his arms. "Daddy, look at my flowers," she exclaimed, pointing to her crown. "They're beautiful, sweetheart, just like you and your mother," James said, kissing her cheek before setting her back down to rejoin Sophia. Rose reached him, taking his hands in hers. "Ready to do this again?" she asked softly. "With you? Always," he replied. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They repeated the vows they had made 3 years ago, adding new promises that reflected the journey they had traveled since, as spouses, parents, and partners in the work that continued to transform lives around the world. "When I first met you," James said in his renewed vows, "I was a man who had lost hope. You gave me not just health but purpose. Not just a future but a family. Every day with you and our children is a gift I never expected to receive." Rose's eyes shimmered with emotion as she responded. "You took a chance on me when I was just your cleaner with strange ideas. You trusted me when you had every reason not to. And together we've created more than I ever dreamed possible. This institute, our children, our life together. You're still the best reckless decision I ever made." Their guests laughed at this reference to their unusual beginning, many of them knowing the full story of how the cleaner and the billionaire had found each other. As they sealed their renewed vows with a kiss, little Lily clapped excitedly, and baby Thomas cooed from his caretaker's arms, as if approving their parents' commitment. The celebration afterward spread throughout the Institute's grounds, with food, music, and tours for guests who hadn't visited before. James and Rose moved among their friends and colleagues, Lily skipping alongside them, occasionally stopping to explain her favorite plants to anyone who would listen, a miniature tour guide already passionate about her parents' work. Later in the evening, as the party continued under strings of lights illuminating the gardens, James and Rose found a quiet moment alone, watching their daughter dozing in Sophia's arms while Thomas slept peacefully in his carrier nearby. "Did you ever imagine this?" Rose asked, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "When you were sick, when you first gave me your black card, did you ever think we'd end up here?" James shook his head. "Never. I was just trying to cause a little chaos before I died." He smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "Instead, I found everything worth living for." Rose looked out at the Institute buildings glowing softly in the evening light, then at their sleeping children. "From cleaning your floors to running this place together, raising our kids. Life takes the strangest turns." "The best ones," James agreed. "Though I have to say, you were a very overqualified cleaner. And you were a surprisingly cooperative patient." Eventually. They laughed together, the easy intimacy of years together evident in their gentle teasing. "The Institute is requesting permission to name the new pediatric wing after Lily and Thomas," Rose mentioned, changing the subject. "They want to honor the next generation of the Johnson-Wilson legacy." "What do you think?" James asked, always careful to make these decisions together. "I think our children will have plenty of opportunities to make their own legacy," Rose replied thoughtfully. "But it's a nice symbol of what we're building here, something that will continue beyond us." James nodded. "A place of healing that honors the past while looking to the future. Just like us." As the celebration continued around them, they remained in their quiet corner, content to watch their family and the fruits of their work flourishing together. The unlikely path that had brought them together, a dying billionaire's reckless act and a determined cleaner's secret knowledge, had led to something neither could have anticipated. A full life rich with purpose, love, and the joy of creating something meaningful together. And as the stars appeared above the institute that bore Rose's name but belonged to both of them, and now to their children too, they shared a silent moment of gratitude for the strange circumstances that had brought them together and the choice they had made to build something lasting from those unusual beginnings. A cleaning lady with a secret. A billionaire with a black card and nothing to lose. A chance encounter that had healed not just a disease, but two hearts that hadn't known they were searching for each other. Sometimes the most unexpected cures were exactly what was needed. And sometimes they led to the most beautiful beginnings.